Hello, Paul here at the War HQ. So we're just going to start off and paint up these British Airborne that we've made up. So we're going to do, the undercoat is Desert Yellow from Army Painter. You hear my little friends in the background, my apologies. And I've mounted the guys on a bit of blue tack on this cardboard box, and we're going to go and spray these. You want to make sure that there's not too much moisture. Do it outside and preferably nice and warm, and I've put them on the box so that I can spray up into the difficult bits to reach. And the Desert Yellow, it's a light colour, so it's going to be a good base for any of the colours we decide to go on, but this is going to be mainly the base coat for the camouflage jackets, and it'll make an excellent base coat for the whole thing really. So we'll come back once we've done that and show you where we're at. So here we are, we've had the guys out and painted. Put them on the box allows you to tip them up and get the spray into all these underparts a wee bit better, give them a good coat. And then you just need to peel these off, they're just on with a bit of blue tack, and that'll be them ready to paint. So we'll get one of these guys ready with my little friends in the backyard there giving me a help along. So we'll get these guys all taken off the box and get them ready for painting, and we'll start going through it. So here we are, this is what we are painting up in this little section. A couple of pulp minis have sneaked in there that I want to paint up today for somebody, so I'm just doing them with this batch. But these are our paratroops, and this is the guy that we're going to be concentrating on today. Don't know if you can get him into focus there, let's try better, there we go. So we're going to be painting up that wee guy today and see how it goes. Quality doesn't seem to be all that great on the camera at that range. There we go, it needs to be that bit further back, so I'll remember that when we're actually videoing. So that's the guy we're going to paint. He's the NCO, and he looks like he's got a little tash there, and he's pointing, encouraging the guys on. But we'll be painting this batch all together, and we're going to do the base coats first. And first of all, we'll be doing the trousers in Monster Brown using Army Painter War paints, as you can see there. And then we'll move on to do the skin in Tanned Flesh. And then we're going to use a mixture of Uniform Grey and Matte Black for the boots. And then for the webbing, I'm going to start off with Army Green for the camouflage, which would be next. Actually, I might do the webbing after the camouflage, so we'll do the camouflage. We're going to use Angel Green and Oak Brown, and then the berets going to do in Chaotic Red, and I'll probably do the Piet in Angel Green. So we'll see how that all works out. We shall get started in just a second. Got my trusty palette in me brushes, and we'll get started. So as always, the first thing to do is to give your paint a good shake. Give it a shake off camera so the wee camera here doesn't go flying, and we'll slip some into the palette I'm using. And here we've got to figure out which brush we're going to use. Oh, I'm just going to use, this is going to be a GW Artificer layering brush, but it doesn't matter too much. And we're going to add some water into the mix. Just mix it up. And I could probably be using a bigger brush for this, but you'll get the idea. So we're just going to layer this on. Now, one of the things I often find is people get quite frightened about the idea of doing the camouflage patterns, and really don't get scared about it, just get some paint on. You can always redo it. Just quite often people, because they're a little bit scared, unsure of what to do, they leave it for another day, and it ends up into one of those jobs that you always meant to do but never did do. So just get a colour on. It doesn't matter if it's the right colour, doesn't really matter if you mess everything up, but you see what I'm doing? I'm just slapping the base colours on here. Bigger brush would be better. This is quite thin down paint, but you get the idea. Hopefully it's staying in shot all the time here. And then once you've got those on, you just go on and do all the others. So there we go, we have finished doing the trousers on these guys. Missed a wee bit there. It didn't take very long, just a couple of minutes for these 6 guys. The brown I've used is a little bit lighter than I really wanted. I've used Monster Brown there, and might have been better with the darker shade. I can't remember what it is, but we'll darken that down as we're doing it. And it's time to move on to flesh. So I've got some of the flesh paint out here. I've thinned it down just a little bit, just so the flow improves a bit better. And this is one of my favourite. I don't generally like doing the base layers because I just find it fiddly, time consuming. The bit that I really like is getting the details on, but on my base layers I like doing the flesh the best, because I think once you've got the flesh done, the models come alive. Does that make any sense? I don't know if you find that when you're painting, guys, but once I get the flesh on, I start to be able to imagine better what these are going to look like. With the base layers on, it's sometimes very difficult to imagine how they're going to look in the end, and sometimes when you're doing the base layers they can look very bright and you go through, oh, this is never going to work. But once you get the whole lot done, it all starts coming together. My favourite bits of doing the minis, I think we'll zoom in a little bit there. My favourite bit of doing the minis is the detailing work. Actually, I find it to be the quickest work as well. I suppose that's maybe why I don't like doing the base coat so much. But here we are. We're getting on with the flesh. Just putting down a nice thin layer. And because we've used this light shade for the undercoat, it's going on very well even with this thin layer. So chances are excuse me while I cough, chances are you could probably get away with 1 coat. I'm going to be doing 2 thin coats, I think, on these. But that's him finished. Get into focus there for you. And I don't know if it works better with that light off or on. Difficult to tell. There we go. But you can see the details. So that's the trousers and the flesh done. Looking very light just now. And I'm going to go back and I will do another coat on the flesh, just to make sure nice and smooth. We're going to do these ones to tabletop and do a bit of detailing later. So on this video, because I'm doing these to tabletop, I'm not going to show you. I normally do the eyes first and then I do the flesh, just the way I do it. I'll probably add eyes into this guy in a moment or two, but you get the idea. So that's the flesh done, and next we'll be moving on to doing the boots. Hi guys, I've actually decided to go with a slightly darker shade, which is leather brown for the uniform trousers, rather than the monster brown. So we've taken the monster brown out and we've replaced that with leather brown. Very similar in shape, but leather brown's just a shade darker. It's just going to, I think it's going to look a bit better in the end. I want the trousers to end up looking darker. So that's what we've done there. And the next stage is we're going to do the boots, and for that we're going to use a mix of matte black with a bit of uniform grey, so that we lighten up the black a little bit, so when we use an ink we'll get a little bit of shading in there with it. Anyway, we'll see how that looks in just a second once I've got these mixed up. So here we are. I've just added a spot of grey into that big blob of black there. I'm just trying to take the black back a wee shade. Just give it a good mix, and that will probably do it. You can get some colours that are pre-shaded, to be slightly lighter. It's more like a tyre colour, I guess. And so we'll start off on the model we were using, which is this chap here. So I'm going to use this shade on the boots, and I'm also going to paint the weapons in this colour too. Again, because we're doing it this way around, doesn't matter if we're too hashy, because doing the gaiters is where we're going to tidy up. I could maybe go with a bit lighter, a wee bit more lighter grey in this, just to lighten it up a wee shade yet. But we'll see how it looks when it dries. And you can see that's the boots done. And then if there's any tidying up to do, as I say, we'll tidy that up. Oh, sorry, missed it there. We'll tidy that up when we're doing the gaiters. And so we should be able to do this wee section here pretty quickly, really, because we've given us that ourselves that option of doing the tidy up when we do the gaiters. Well, the bit we will need to be a wee bit careful of is doing the weapons. We really don't want to get the dark colour all over the place. I've just put a little bit of water in there to thin it down a bit, as I usually do. Sometimes I use the paint sticker, but we'll knock it off. Now I need to do a quick bit of research, but I'm pretty sure that on this stain, I think this is a Mark 5 stain or the Mark 4, can't remember which one, but I'm pretty sure this one has wooden stock and handles. So I'll just research that, and then if needs be, just being careful there as I can, if needs be we can paint in the stock. Just trying to be a wee bit careful, as I say, doing the weapon there. Don't want to get black all over the place. I'll just paint that wee bit of stock in the back there. A lot of people paint their weapons gunmetal, but if you actually look at weapons, they're usually painted in a dark matte colour. Yeah, it's definitely wooden stock on that one. They're usually painted in a dark matte colour, and there's only silvering you get is where there's been any scratches or anything on that black metallic. Let's just get that wee bit in there. Oh, it's just a wee bit. I'm not going to get to. Where are you? In there. Done it. And then look from underneath. Just a couple of bits. That's a good point, actually. Once you've done painting a figure, it's always worth looking from underneath just to see if there's any bits you've missed. Not that they're usually going to be seen, but anyway, that's the boots and the weapon done on him. We're going to carry on and do the rest on the other guys. Right, so the next part of this job is going to be starting to put the camouflage on the jacket. And for that, we're going to use Angel Green. I'm also going to use Angel Green for the paint for the weapon. So we will get started on doing the camouflage. So it's a case of getting some of the green into the old mixing dish here and making a start. So we'll give it a good shake. I've already pre-shook this one a little bit and get a little of the colour off on there. Now for this one, I think I'm possibly not going to mix water in. There's a wee bit of the medium. I'm just going to leave it as it is and see how we go. So for the camouflage, you're going to paint the jacket as though there's nothing else on it. We'll go over the details, and what you want to do is just do regular shapes just all over, and like that. You don't want any gapping on them. You might want you can do the odd shape. Now with doing camouflage, a lot of people get intimidated by it. including myself, but usually the best way is just to get on and make a stab at it. We're going to do just right regular patches of colour. And now we've got a little flat bit coming up here, so I'm going to do, don't know if you can see that terribly clearly, but I'm going to make sure the patch is kind of outlined there. Does that make sense? So it's like there's a green bit going on here, but this patch that comes underneath the crotch of the jacket has been lifted back for ease of movement at the moment. And I want these patches to be reasonably dark. And I'm just going to have the odd sort of pointed shape coming down like that. And I'm painting over some of these to make sure that they're not sort of partially transparent in there. A wee blob on the collar, and then you kind of get the idea here, hopefully. Hopefully you can see that nice and clearly. Now, the other thing that's worth mentioning is one of my pet things. You come across people that say, oh, well, that wasn't the green that was used in the camouflage. And they may be right, but colours can change how they look simply because of whether the colour is in light, is in broad sunlight, or in shade, for example. And it can change its appearance dependent on how old it is. So very faded uniforms. There are several pictures on YouTube showing, the one I can think of offhand is the one that shows the German Heer uniforms, and he has about 20 or 30 uniforms which all show the German sort of field grau, and they range from green to grey. And these are all supposed to be the same colour, and it's very much dependent on how worn they are, etc. So if you don't have quite the right colours, it doesn't matter. Just go ahead, get the paint on, and then sort the rest out later. So you kind of see what I've done with that. I've splotched it all over there, and then we are going to darken these down a wee bit. Hopefully you can see that. I might need to do a wee bit more green. I think there's not quite enough green on there. So some of these patches, I'm going to make them just a wee bit bigger. I want to see more green on this one. And then we've got brown to come after this. So all we're doing here is we're just trying to get a general feeling for the camouflage. I won't get too tied up with trying to imitate the patterns exactly, because it's probably won't work. I'm a bit happier with that. Time to get the brown on. So once you get the rest of the guys done, we'll come back and we'll show you the next stage on the camouflage. So that's us just done the angel green. It's really a bit dark for what I'd like, but it'll do the job nicely. Although I decided not to paint the Piat that colour, I'll probably stick with army green, which is a little bit light, but it'll do the trick. So the next colour we're up on is we're going to use this oak brown. So we're going to do oak brown to finish off the camel, and we're also going to paint the wood on the one guy with the rifle, wherever he is. That will be painted in this oak brown too. So let's get to it. Give the bottle a good shake. I've actually put steel balls in each of these bottles as well to help with the shaking, because sometimes shaking them is a bit of fun. Right, let's get some paint out there. There's a bit more than I was expecting. What consistency is it? It's not bad. Yeah, I think we'll use that straight out for the time being. So, where's our little officer chap? Here he is. So we're just going to basically what we did before. Maybe overlap some of the parts. Let's put a little bit of detail so it has his colours turned over there. We're just trying to break up thing. And again, I'm just painting over all the details here. And I think it will become, because once we start painting in the webbing, etc., I think it'll look a lot more natural. Hopefully you'll see what I mean when we come to do that. There we go, so we're just patching these spots in. You've got the idea here. Now, at this moment in time, I'm looking at this and thinking this is not quite how I was wanting it to look, but let's just wait until we've got all the rest of the colours sorted out. Often find that when you do something and you're looking at it thinking, oh gosh, is that really how it's turning out? That the time you actually get it finished, it looks completely different. And all we're really doing is just roughly splash. There's no real, for me anyway, there's no real skill or patterning going on here. It's about getting a little bit of colour on. And you can, if you want, you can look out patterns of the camouflage and you can try and recreate it faithfully if you like. No reason why you shouldn't. I'm not. You get the idea what we're doing there. Hopefully that will dry out a bit lighter than it is. So we're going to do the rest of the guys and we'll come back and show you how they all turned out. Right, so this is the stage we're at with them all. And now it's time, we're going to do all the webbing. I'm going to start off doing the webbing with Army Green, which I've put out onto the palette here. But I think we're going to add a bit of water to that. It's looking a bit thick. I don't want it too thin, but... For Scotland, it's quite hot here today, so paint dries out pretty quick today. Hear the background noise there because it's so hot. So what we're going to do is do all the webbing in this Army Green. Now, when you're looking for your minis to pop on the tabletop, a couple of ways you can do it. One is choice of the webbing that you're going to use for the detailing. Now I'm doing green webbing, which is more like the actual colour the webbing was, but if you really want them to pop and you're not too careful, we're looking for look rather than historical accuracy, you can get away with doing them a very light buff colour, as similar to what their dress gaiters etc would be, which is a very light colour, and that does make them pop that wee bit. I like to do my skin fairly light, and just trying to get this strap done there. And quite often, because the minis are quite dark, you can make the skin pop out, and that gives something for folk to focus on. We are still on base colours obviously at the moment, and you'll start to see that painting over the camouflage that we did. We'll start to see these details emerging. It's still going to look quite rough at the moment. Once we come on and we start doing washes and tints and inking, you'll start to see it coming together a bit more. Paint's a little bit thin, so we'll probably have to do 2 coats. Hopefully some of that was on camera there. So we've got the webbing straps. It's quite difficult to see where the straps are on some of this. But even with the green, light green webbing, it is possible, here's the belt in there, it is possible to get some quite good detailing and just do a bit of highlighting if you are prepared to do a little bit of, spend a little bit of time to make these guys pop. You can get them to show up on the table quite nicely. Right there. Down there. Sometimes it's a little difficult to pick up where your detailing is. But you see what we're doing. It's a belt in there on these parachuters. They have this rope cord that's tied around them, and it goes round about the neck and they tie it under the arms. They used it for making ladders and lanyards and things. So you can see once the webbing's in, he's starting to come together. I'll probably go through and do another coat on that webbing more than likely, but you get the idea. So now we're just doing the webbing details and all the straps, and then last thing I always try and do is the berets so that the colour doesn't rub off so easily. And then I'm just spotting the odd bits because I'm talking, not concentrating, the odd bits I've missed. So I tend to do the berets last, yeah, just out of habit, and there's a reason for it. So we'll go through, do the webbing on all the other guys, and then we'll let you see how we're getting on. So they're now all in this kind of state. Still looks a bit rough and ready. Once we start inking it, it'll all start coming together. And so the last thing we need to do on these base coats is we're going to do chaotic red on the berets. So again, giving the paints a really good shake. And drop some out on the disc. Oh, there we go. And then really just the same process as before. That paint's probably watery enough, and I'm probably, oops, Daisy, let's bring it into focus. I'm probably going to give these 2 coats each. And it's just a case of going round there carefully. You can see where it's showing through a little bit on the light background, but that's not a problem. So we'll let that dry, we'll come back and do a second coat, and we'll go around and do all the guys, and then we'll be on to some washes. So, stage we're up to next is starting to do the washes over our base coats, and we're going to do the flesh first. We're going to do the flesh separately, so just using a bit bigger, thicker brush this time. This one's actually a Rosemary & Co number 2, Serial 93 if anybody's really bothered. But for this, any brush will do. This is probably a bit too much of a posh brush for this. But we've shaken out the flesh tone from Army Painter, the flesh wash from Army Painter, put some into the dish, and very simple, just get some up on the brush and wash over those any bits that got the flesh. Because we're doing the flesh first, it doesn't matter if you overspill really onto the camouflage. This is the reason why I'm doing it with the wash that we're going to use on the uniform. We don't want to overspill. Sorry, I've been doing that all off camera there. Let's try again, shall we? So so we just want to be in there. We want to get the recesses. We don't want to be too, we don't need to be too careful with the wash, but the wash we're going to use afterwards on the uniform is going to be darker, so we don't want to get that on the flesh. So I'm doing the flesh first because we can tidy up later and it doesn't matter if it goes over. That's what we're going to be doing. Let me just go over that again because I don't think I got that all on camera, but it's very straightforward. This is the guy we should have been doing anyway, so we'll keep him on camera, Paul. And here we go, we're just catching the wash. Make sure we get behind the ears like your mum used to tell you when you were getting washed, and get into all the recesses with that flesh wash. Get the hands done. Here we go. In fact, it's quite handy if you do just come over slightly. What we're also hoping to do is, for example, on the sleeve in here, and between the hand, we're looking for a little line of shadow in there in particular, just to outline it. And there we go. That's it done. I'll go and do the other guys and then we'll come back for the next in the wash process. Right, so next we're going to use soft tone ink, and we're just going to give this a general inking all over, everywhere except the berry and the flesh. So let's get ahead and do that. Given it a good shake already. Put some out into the old dish. You'll notice that in the dish this is a good bit darker. We're not going to dilute this down. I'm going to use it as is, but a fairly thin coat. We can always go back and do it again. And so we're just going to do a nice general wash. Don't want it pooling, but I'll start to darken everything down a bit to bring back some of the detailing in the sculpt. So just being careful not to put our brush in the wrong paint for a start, and go it down. You don't have to go on to the boots. We're actually going to do a black wash, dark tone over that. You can do if you want to. We're just going to go over it. It won't make too much difference. So just as I say, just being careful to stay off the flesh tones that we've done, but give it a good general brush down, making sure we're not getting any bubbles in it. And you'll see this darkens the whole thing down quite a bit. And then we're going to come back in if we need it and do a second wash if we feel it's going to need toned down a bit at all. That's looking pretty good. Remember not to forget the strap on the gun there. Make sure we're in at the belt, and I think we are pretty good. So we're just going to go over all of them like that, and then we'll have a look and see where we go. Right then, so we have the ink is now dry on these, and that brings out the details, darkens down some of the colours on the jacket smock, and the guys are looking pretty good. Just a couple of things to do really. We need to do the bayonets, and I need to finish this guy's head off, and also maybe a very light dry brush on the weaponry, just to give it a slightly black and metallic look where its gun's got scratches, etc. And then basing, and as a basic job they're ready to go. So here we have gunmetal. So give it a good shake like usual, and a little bit into the dish. So first of all, we are going to, so we're going to paint out the bayonet on the end of here. Very easy, straightforward. There we go. That's that done. And then I'm going to be a bad boy and just use this brush. So we're going to do a little dry brush. We'll take the excess off there, and just going to lightly run it. Doesn't want much really, just to bring out the detailing. Lightly run it across there, and that's how we're going to do the guns. So I'll go ahead and do the rest of the guns, only take me a minute. So there we have silver in done. See, I've just lightly done the guns, and also I've just lightly patched in the badges on the caps with the same silver. Well, it's gunmetal, sorry, gunmetal. I've done the bands on the gun here and the stock on the end, and we're going to ink those before we finish up. We'll be there. So all we've got left to do is the bandage and the hair on this guy, and I'll probably use skeleton bone for the bandage and a brown for the hair, and then we're just on to basing. So we've used skeleton bone, as I said, to paint the bandage, and then I'm going to use fur brown to do his hair, and then we'll just be finishing off the inking and basing. So we've done the bandage in skeleton bone, and I did his hair with fur brown, which is probably a bit light. And now what we're going to do is we will use some inks. So we're going to put dark tone ink on the boots, which we've actually already done. And now we're going to use some flesh wash on the bandage in here, and then we're going to go over the hair with soft tone, and we'll have a look and see. We might even add some dark tone into it just to give it a bit of contrast. The fur brown is very close to the skin colour. So we've given them a good shake, and what we'll do is we'll do the flesh wash first. So I'm going to do this flesh wash over the bandage and the hair. Doesn't matter if we stray onto the skin. It's just to bring out the detailing on the bandage, really. You could, if you wanted, of course, put a couple of little blood stains if you wanted on the bandage. But for tabletop, this is fine. And then I think I'm just going to add a little bit of soft tone into the top of the hair there, just a little bit darker. We can do this while it's still wet, doesn't matter if we mix them up a bit. Just to darken that up. I just want to make sure it doesn't really go onto the bandage. Just to give us a bit more shadows. And that would be that. So the only thing really left to do is we're going to base these up. I'm going to base these ones up quickly, as these are going to be our quick tabletop. But hopefully you're liking the results so far, and we'll get that basing done in just a second or two. So basing is dead simple and light. We've put a bit of PVA into the tub here, and we're just going to spread the PVA around the base. I'm sure you've all done basing, guys. So just spreading, trying not to come over the lip of these raised lip bases too much. You'll all have your own ways of basing. I don't get too close to the feet. It doesn't matter too much how close you get. I don't like to get in too close. I don't like to see the basing sand up the boots, and usually the basing material will slip over. So that's fine. And then what I've got here is a mixture of ballast and sand. When I say ballast, I'm meaning model train ballast. Just very light stuff. It's a bit like pumice mixed in with sand, and then we just bury them into there. Give it a light tap and give them a bit of a shake off. And what we'll do is we allow that to dry, and then once that's dry, we're going to put a coating of PVA glue over the top, watered down PVA glue, and I'll show you how I do that to keep it quick and simple. So get the rest of them done, and then we'll come back and show you when they're all dried. So we did the basing. Now the reason I use this basing is because it's all very light, and then once we've got it protected, if you do an ink over it, it would do the job nicely. So sorry about nudging the camera there. So what we're going to do is we're going to, now that's been stuck with PVA down to the base, just to double make sure there's nothing going about, I've got PVA in a dish here that's been mortared down, probably about 50-50, and this is where all my spare bits of PVA end up, and I'll just keep this here with sealed so it doesn't evaporate. And all I do is I just literally dunk the whole base in that. See if you get a better view of it. There we go. All I do is dunk it down to there, and then shake off what I don't need, and then taking that bit off there, just take off the excess, and then we just leave them to dry, and that'll seal in the base. Make sure there's no loose stuff left, and we can carry on to finish off the bases on these tabletop standard ones. So we're just going to carry on, do the rest of those. I'm pretty sure you don't need to watch me do that, and we'll come back for the final stages. Okay, so now we're at this stage. With a bit of luck, all this should be nicely glued, and all we're going to do it is we're going to add a bit of dark tone to it. And again, we can be pretty slapdash with this, as we've got black boots on our guys. Let's put a bit of the strong tone in there, dark tone in there. Once we've given it a wee shake, and we'll take this guy to do it on, but you know how this is going to go. So we just splash it all on. And probably better adding some soft tone into this as well to brown it off a bit, but it'll work with this. And you'll see, because it's all light ground cover that we've used, it'll shade all the little rocks and things that are on there, and then it would be perfectly good to go like this, as is really. It would be good. It's a fair tabletop standard, and so that's all we're going to do to it. And oh, I don't know if you can see that so well. Hold it a bit closer. It'll dry off. It'll give you some depth. I think now I'm looking at it, definitely I would have used the soft tone for this, would be better rather than the dark tone, but me, it works. Now the other thing to remember is around the base here, you can either leave it as it is, or you can paint them a colour just to match your army, or if you want to keep your lieutenants a bit more distinguishable so they stand out on the field, or special weapons teams, or you want squads, you can paint these bases different colours. So for example, you can make your NCOs have white rims to their bases, or you could have different squads having different colours, so one squad in blue, one squad in red, for example, or you could just choose red will be the colour of the bases of your LMGs and loaders, for example. But you see what you can do now that these are lit bases, it gives you a little bit more scope for identifying them. So we're going to go on and we're going to do the rest of these guys, and that'll be them finished to a tabletop standard. If you really wanted to, you could add some ground cover, so some static grass or something, you know, match them out to match your bases. But in the next video, what we're going to take is we're going to take these guys from this basic tabletop standard, and we're going to have a go at making these pop on your gaming table. So watch out for the next video. Once I do it, there'll be a link on this one. Thank you guys. As always, comments, likes, shares are all greatly appreciated.